So like to go down this path a little bit more, what is the kind of day-to-day, not the harvesting season, let's just talk day-to-day life experience. Like, are people living in the city and doing that route every day, or are they living isolated from the big city?
Yeah, mostly isolated. So there's people that live in the mountains and they live in the city, or they live in these distant towns in the mountains, and they focus on their town. They focus on farming potatoes and growing their crops and raising their livestock, or they live in the eyebrow of the jungle. They live in this jungle zone where they're focusing on their farm, basically. But there's also smaller cities or smaller towns in this eyebrow of the jungle, this region that grows coffee.
So this is maybe not exactly connected, but in England, you can pass over a hill, and though the language isn't different, the dialect might be different, and certainly no.
Okay.
But like, is there a similar experience here where like you pass over, you go to the other side of this mountain range, and people are speaking a different language?
To a certain extent, actually. So there's the Quechua-speaking people live mostly in the mountains of the Andes, and there's about 14 million Quechua speakers in the world, distributed throughout Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. And they've kind of mixed and gone further into the jungle, into regions that have been traditionally more indigenous or tribal. And so in one of these regions, in Cusco, a little bit downriver, so not necessarily where we're growing coffee, but there's some coffee that grows there. On one side of the river is these Quechua-speaking people that obviously they have mixed with Spanish and with other European blood over the years. And then on the other side of the river is this indigenous group called the Machiguenga. And so that is indigenous land. And so sort of on one side is indigenous jungle dwellers, and the other side is the Quechua speakers. And there's no real animosity between the two, and you can visit, but it's one of those things where you can't really go after dark, and you kind of have to be invited, especially as a gringo. So, yeah, you can definitely get different languages, different groups of people, but some of the most stark contrasts can be in the landscape itself, because on one side, it'll be lush green forest, and on the other side, it'll just be this grass, this pasture land. And so it's like very interesting dichotomy.
So when you're working there, are you speaking Quechua or are you speaking Spanish?
My Quechua is pretty fluent at this point. So.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. It's a really difficult language. I'm speaking all Spanish. Most of the people speak Spanish. Some of the old people, maybe 60, 70 plus, they speak mostly Quechua or only Quechua. So it's difficult to maintain a conversation with them because my Quechua is very basic. And I remember harvesting with this old man harvesting his cacao in his farm, and that was really interesting because we couldn't really communicate at all, but you get enough of a communication that it works out. But now most of the people speak either just Spanish or both Spanish and Quechua.